I'm very gratified that Jason has put together this study because it comports with what I had found over 40 years anecdotally of my own experience as a labor and employment lawyer. But I never aggregated any of that data. I'm not trained to do so. I rely to a large extent on the fine work done by the Center for Immigration Studies, which is their data and their studies are indispensable to the work we do on the Civil Rights Commission, and in fact, indispensable to the discourse on, or the debate on immigration nationwide. Had it not been for the groundwork done by the Center for Immigration Study, our immigration policy would be radically different right now. I recall that in the 2013 crucial debate related to immigration reform, much of the information provided by Center for Immigration Studies formed the basis for the pushback against the Gang of Four bill, Gang of Eight bill, and it was essential to making sure that we had an immigration policy that favored Americans. Now, over the 40 years of my practice of labor and employment law, I had seen a number of cases similar to what Jason had seen, but of course never followed through on those things in terms of trying to discern whether or not there was a broad-based phenomenon of discrimination against blacks. But it concerned me enough that I had asked the Civil Rights Commission to conduct a hearing on this. And there were at least 3 hearings that we conducted, one of which was designed specifically to determine the effect of illegal immigration on black workers. We had a panel of experts in this area, some of the finest in the field, who testified, and they spanned the ideological spectrum, from far left to far right. Regardless of whether or not they disagreed on discrete policy issues, each and every one of them agreed that illegal immigration has a decidedly negative impact on black wage levels and employment levels. And I see Stephen here, he's heard me say this a couple of times. The information was really kind of overwhelming, frankly. What we found, and this is something that comports with Economics 101, which I think I spent 4 years in, but if you've got a significant influx of low-wage labor, what does it do? It depresses wage levels, correct? And what we found also was, regardless of the wage levels, illegal immigrants displaced black workers in areas that had traditionally been populated by black workers: service industry, agriculture, construction, hospitality. It was a fairly pronounced displacement also. And the reason for that is because what you find is black workers, particularly black males, are disproportionately concentrated in the low-wage labor market and are disproportionately likely to have no more than a high school diploma. And the same is true for the cohort of illegal aliens who are disproportionately concentrated in the low-skilled labor market, disproportionately likely to have no more than a high school diploma, if any type of diploma, and they compete with one another in areas such as construction, hospitality, service, and agriculture. And we also found, at least at that time, and this was about 7 or 8 years ago, that much of the competition, it was nationwide, but you'd see a lot of it in large metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, but also in the southeastern states, in certain industries, poultry industry, construction industry, so on and so forth. This was not a small displacement either. We had one witness who testified that after he had run the numbers, he found that 40% of the decline in labor participation rates among black workers over 3 decades was attributable to competition from illegal immigration. 40%. You did the math on that in terms of labor participation rate, you've got to do some juggling of the numbers, but it comes to nearly 1 million fewer jobs for black Americans as a result of the competition from illegal immigrants. And it's not just the employment levels, it's the wage levels also. And I can only give you a few examples, but we had evidence from the Fed in Atlanta, which did a study on this, to show that illegal immigrants depressed wages, the competition from illegal immigrants, depressed wages by $960 on average, but in certain sectors, such as the hospitality industry, the depression of wage levels was $1,560. When you consider what the wage levels are for on an annualized basis, that's a significant amount of money. And because black workers were disproportionately concentrated in those areas, they were disproportionately affected. I can go on with this type of anecdotal data, which Jason's done a better job than we have of putting together and really highlighting the adverse effects of this. But there's a downstream effect also. And the downstream effect, which is kind of a domino effect, is, well, when you've got a lower employment rate or lower wages among a certain cohort of the population, that population is also likely to suffer certain adverse effects such as family formation is at a lower rate, there's higher incarceration rates, and we see this kind of phenomenon displayed in the black community. Not all black communities, but enough of them to present a concern. And it was enough of a concern, by the way, we had a couple of other hearings related to this matter, not discreetly, not related just to the competition from legal immigration, but it swerved into that phenomenon. This type of adverse impact was something that concerned us enough, at least concerned me enough, that we on a number of occasions reached out to political leadership, specifically the Congressional Black Caucus, because they call themselves the Congressional Black Caucus. I didn't call them that. And I thought that they would be particularly concerned about this particular issue because the adverse impact is egregious. So I can tell you that we made a number of attempts to highlight this issue to the Congressional Black Caucus. We sent several letters to the then head of the Congressional Black Caucus. All we heard were crickets. In fact, on one occasion, the head of the Congressional Black Caucus falsely claimed that they had never heard from us until we produced the letters, the multiple letters and contacts that we had with them, and then they had, there was radio silence from them. So there is, my concern is that on a political level, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of energy behind this particular issue and trying to address the impact of this particular issue. I think that's an abomination, and I'll leave it at that.